intelligence update on the war in Ukraine from the British Defense Intelligence. Now, before we get into this story, just a quick word on why I said what I said, particularly British Defense Intelligence. With what's going on around the world, you always need to check the sources of the information, not just hear a crisis report. Oh, I saw it on crisis report, it must be true. No, because I can be subject to misinformation. So, and I'm sure I will at some level. Everybody else will be at sometimes too. So always check the sources for where this information is coming from to understand what's going on. And to continue to get these updates, please subscribe and like the video. Now on with the story. Okay, since October 10th, Russia has attacked Ukraine with a campaign of strikes targeting electrical power infrastructure. To date, this action has come in waves. Now, the reason it's coming in waves, and this is part of what Crisis Report does, is analyze what is happening. The reason it comes in waves is that if you're like every day sort of kind of throwing a missile or two, or a lot of these are what they're calling suicide drones, in that they're not a drone that launches another munition, they're a drone that flies into the target, sort of like a human set of guided missile, but a human guided missile, if you will. If you do them one at a time, they're going to be easier to shoot down. But if you do them in a wave, in volleys, including not just all literally the literal same time, but say in one day, you can overwhelm whatever defenses they're set up to have. So that is one of the reasons, if not the primary reason, they're coming in waves. The most recent intense strikes were on the 30th October, which involved targeting hydroelectric dam facilities for the first time. The strikes have resulted in widespread damage to transmission stations and power plants scheduled, and emergency blackouts have become routine part of Ukraine, with Kyiv notably impacted. Now, I do also have on-the-ground sources in Ukraine, or in the city there, and blackouts of both power and internet connectivity. So I know that has been happening. Recoverability varies. The impact of the strikes unlikely to be felt uniformly. Continued degradation of networks by Russian strikes will almost certainly have consequences for interlinked water and heating systems that will be most significantly felt by the civilian population during winter as demand increases. Remember, winter is coming, and it's going to be brutal the world over, people. Food this winter is going to be brutal the world over. Remember that. Russian strikes on power generation and transmission are having disproportionate effect upon civilians in Ukraine, indiscriminately impacting critical functions such as healthcare and heating. Continued prioritization of critical national infrastructure over military targets strongly implies the intent to strike at civilian morale. Okay, let's look at a little bit of that there. Russia has had a history of suppressing Ukraine. And I say Russia because it goes back to Imperial Russia through the communist period, especially under Stalin with the Holodomor that Western media covered up. Looking at you, New York Times. They know what they did. On through till today. And all of these attempts for Russian domination of Ukraine, they have, even once they've achieved general military control, it has not granted them enough control of daily lives that they've always had to then target the civilian populations. Again, like the Holodomor as the greatest example, but there are many tales of people coming from the area of the Ukraine, whether they call themselves Russians or whatnot once they got here to America, but of Cossacks that were from further east that were being used to brutalize the local population and causing, this is in the 19th century and early 20th century, but mostly 19th century, causing people to flee then Imperial Russia, and particularly in the South, and come to the United States. A strong motivator for people coming to the United States. So when I say that there's a long history of this, it really goes back deep. And when you need to do that to try to control the population, you know you are being an empire and not just a collective groups of similar people coming together, say like modern day Germany, instead of breaking apart into, you know, Bavaria and Prussia and Hanover or something, particularly Bavaria being Catholic compared to the rest of Germany basically being of Protestant culture compared to like Austria being Catholic. So, you know, a collective group of similar people, often considered a nation. This is an imperial action that's happening now. I am not sure that the primary reason is right now to target civilian infrastructure. I think, or civilian morale, I should say. I think that is part of it. I think it is understanding that the power infrastructure is allowing the Ukrainians to conduct a civil war that is happening also in, or no, not a civil war, an insurgency type war, insurgency type war that is happening partially in the digital space, partially for hearts and minds, but also all these drones you see flying around, and you're seeing the video footage of them and the attacks and such, they require power. And yeah, I'm sure they could get battery. I mean, they're obviously using batteries at the moment that they're operating, but they require recharging. And if the electric infrastructure continues to function well, it will only facilitate the these actions, where having to bring in charged batteries from a great distance, even within the Ukraine, but having to travel a long time, will be a significant disruption to the Ukrainian forces. That's part of it, but I also think part of it is the Russians are just unable to effectively strike military targets, and things like electrical infrastructure is by its nature immobile, so it's a fixed target. If you guard, you know, one generating plant with anti-aircraft missiles or some such, you can strike power lines that go along large areas of the country. So it's a dispersed architecture that you can't defend everywhere, and they are trying to disrupt it. And I think it's more, it's as much, not maybe more, as much a target of opportunity versus a planned campaign. But like I say, there is a long history of needing to strike at the civilian population there to gain their compliance, shall we say. And so far, historically, it's shown that the compliance is only gained temporarily and has so far always failed in the long run. Right. Well, thanks for your support. See you next time with the next bit of information.